Hi, I'm Mac McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today we got a good live stream for you. It's been a while. This one's going to be packed with some different input. The secret to a good relationship. I'm going to be covering Andrew Huberman's take on the Lex Friedman show. A couple other analysts, Ester, Peril. I always think I get her name wrong. Ester, Peril, who's wrote some great books on relationships. She's a relationship therapist that's quite famous, and the great Jordan Peterson. So I'll be sharing those videos, giving some reactions, and I think that this will be a really good way to look into a topic, because so someone asks the question, the secret to a good relationship, right? So you're going to get different answers for this question from different people, from different outlets. And it comes down to what people value. Okay. So that seems obvious to a lot of people, but it doesn't. Because right now what you have on the internet is people that are famous because of sports have a huge platform, right? So someone like Michael Jordan, he speaks, people listen. Someone like, LeBron James, Joe Montana, these are people I like that I'm reeling off, right? And they get asked a question like this: what's the secret to a great relationship? And some people listen just because they're famous, but really you need to internally answer that question for you. Like, what does it mean to you? Do not let people impose their values and morals onto you, especially if their morals aren't very good. Because someone can be really good at sports, basketball, football, but not really good at relationships. And so what's interesting is someone like Andrew Huberman or Huberman, I always feel like I get his name wrong, who's an academic, Stanford professor, extremely intelligent individual, well-read. He'll answer this question, and he gives a great take, and he gives a great opinion, but let's just keep in mind, we don't know what his relationship background is really, right? He hasn't written specific books on this. But I liked what he had to say. Then we have Jordan Peterson, who's just a legend, right? This guy has so much life experiences. And I'm going to give you his take. And then, like I said, then there's another video that I'm going to throw in here that has to do with married couples that have been married, and what they believe is the secret. Now, I'm going to just give it to you right now. The secret to a good relationship to start with, and I'm going to make this as simplistic as possible, and not imposing what would be good for me. Okay, so this is what you're going to get a lot of times. Well, the secret to a great relationship is this. The secret to a great relationship for this. The secret to start with is, what do you want? What do you value? Okay, so getting in touch with what you value and lining up someone that helps you grow with your values and you help them grow with their values, it's paramount. Because a lot of times what people do when they fall in love or get into a deep relationship, they really didn't put any time into looking for what they want. A lot of times they're just being opportunistic in the sense that this person's attractive, this person's interested in me, and this person is someone I like, I'm attracted to them. But when you start getting deeper and deeper into the relationship and you find things you don't like, and you find things that you let go or you settle for, really from the get-go, you weren't in touch with what you were looking for in a relationship, and therefore the relationship's going to fail more times than not, because you were just basing it on intimacy or attraction, which a lot of times in your younger years is what you do naturally, and you don't really find yourself. And that's why a lot of times in your early 20s, those relationships don't last, because both you and the other individual are evolving. All right, so getting into this today, like I said, and put it in the comments if you watch this live stream later on, that what is the secret to a great relationship? It's funny how YouTube has these questions now, right? And someone will, punch the thumbnail and go into it. And there's no one answer for this, first of all, okay? There's no one answer, right? Getting in touch with what you want is first and foremost. But I would add, here's really good advice. Okay. Take a scale of 1 to 10 on how much you trust the individual. Take a scale of 1 to 10 on how much you connect or have chemistry with the individual, how good your conversations and interactions are, right? And number 3, what's your attraction on a scale of 1 to 10? If you're below 5 on any of those, it's probably not going to last, or you're settling. If you're at a 6, here's the thing about attraction. It moves, right? Looks change in a day and a week. They can be elevated. They can be devalued. You know what I'm saying? So looks are fleeting. Attraction's fleeting. It's up and down. Connection, not so much. It's going to be more steady. Trust is the concrete foundation that takes longer to develop, but is at the core of a good relationship. All right, so first of all, I'd like to start with some of these couples, I'm going to start with the Lex Friedman and Andrew Huberman interview, and he's being asked this specific question about, what's the secret to a good relationship. So let's get right into that.
Really hard part of a good relationship is just dealing with oneself and making sure that you're staying in that mode of caretaking. Because I do believe that if one is mainly focused on taking good care of the other person, provided they're also focused on taking good care of you to some extent, and we're good at taking care of ourselves, everybody flourishes, everything gets better. But no, I don't think I experienced that until fairly recently.
What do you think is the secret to a successful relationship?
There isn't just one, but at least in the top 5 is master, or at least be good at autonomic self-regulation. Know how to calm yourself down. Don't expect looking to anything external to soothe yourself, is it puts you in a terrible position to be a caretaker of yourself and other people, right? So learn how to self-soothe, right? Learn how to calm your mind, steady your actions, steady your voice. There are tools to do that. We talk about on the podcast, but elsewhere, have that in place. I also think that if your main focus is on, you want to have good boundaries, et cetera, but on tending to the relationship, doing a little bit more than you think you ought to do. If everyone does that, it goes great. I mean, I'm sometimes so positively struck by how supported I feel, because for many years I was just kind of doing everything.
So right here, this is an interesting take in the sense, and I've made a video about this already today briefly. I'm going to go more in depth in it today, but learn to not react emotionally. He says it in a very scientific way because that's his background. But what he means by that is learn to not react emotionally. And a lot of times men and red pill channels will talk about this, that men are rational, logical, women are highly emotional. There's a lot of truth to that. And it's a big one because women's emotions can change quicker day to day. I mean, look at just that time of the month, right? That's a real thing, right? Hormones are changing. A woman pre-period is going to be more emotional. If you've had a girlfriend that you've lived with, and this is one of the things I talk about a lot of times, it's like living with someone's completely different, right? You'll notice, like, what's wrong? Why are you acting this way? Why are you being so emotional about something so petty or so small? And the reality is, you're going to get your period in 2 days, right? So, and sometimes, like I said, if you've never, some guys have never had a sister or been around that many women at their job. If you work on an oil rig, or if you work in a field where it's all men, you just don't understand this. And women can be this highly emotional to back down. And if you are in a relationship where you get emotional to their emotion, it just creates a shitstorm, right? And so what he's saying here is being able to calm down, weather the storm, and not react in an emotional way when you're dealing with something that you need to talk about. And so this is a situation where if you can't calm down, you need to walk away for a little bit and get some space and some time. Because I would say, and I'm going to go back to this this emotion thing, he doesn't discuss it as a man or woman thing. There's plenty of men out there that don't have control of their emotions either. Now, on the flip side of that, I do believe in being able to share your emotions. I think that you should complete your emotions when you're upset. You say what you need to say. But if you're in vast disagreement with your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or you're just not seeing eye to eye, and there's a timing to everything too. This gets lost. You're in a relationship, you just got off of work, you were just in traffic, you had a bad day, your bank account's low, and they come home and tell you something petty like you didn't do the dishes and it's your turn to take out the garbage, right? I'm just giving you some example. And they just blow up, go off, go crazy, and you're like, what's this coming from? Well, you don't realize that because you live together, you see them all the time, and seeing them all the time, you don't realize that sometimes they're not in the mood for this. They don't have the patience. They don't have the willpower to deal with it. Okay? And so being in a longer relationship, having patience, having mindfulness, and the idea that you are and you will be able to calm yourself down, see that someone's highly emotional. You're not going to win this argument right now. And it's probably better to come back to the situation at a different time when both parties are a little bit cooler. Cooler heads prevail, as they say, right? So this one seems like it would be, secret to a good relationship. Be able to not get emotionally wrapped up in a moment, right? That being said, there's going to be times when you're really pissed off and you need to say what you need to say and not hold it back. But what happens is the worst cases of when someone, I'm gonna dissect this a little deeper. He's saying the ability to calm down, to bring your emotions down to a level to make a better decision, right? But on the flip side, I would also say, don't let things go in a relationship to a point where you don't see what you need to say, because that's a bubbling pot of water that's going to overflow at some point, right? And let me know if you've been there before. And let's get back to it.
Everything on my own. So any little thing, I'm like, oh my goodness, this feels huge. And also, I think the dynamics have to be right. Let's be really honest. This is a little bit of a tricky topic, but there is a power dynamic in relationships. Sometimes, not all, but in some relationships, it works much better if one person leads and the other person follows. In other relationships, it's more mutuality, works best. People need to know what they need. And so knowing what you need and what you crave is really...
All right, this is a big one. Okay, I discussed it earlier in the reaction video I did earlier. This is really big. And this gets lost. This is probably one of the number one things I think that people are dealing with. Why aren't relationships lasting longer? Why are there more breakups than ever before, right? It's because some people go, oh, it needs to be more equal. When have you ever been a part of a team or a group where it's completely equal, right? It's even like if you were in a sports team, right? You were on a volleyball team or a basketball team. There's always someone that gets more shots, more minutes, does more, and you're like, they're the best player. It's just not equal. Relationships aren't going to be equal. Someone's going to make more money than the other person. Someone's going to have more power in the relationship. Someone's going to want to lead. Someone's going to want to take the back seat to certain things. Now, it would be great if you thought like, oh, it's just equal. Now, if both people want to be leaders, both people want to tell each other what to do all the time, it's never going to work, right? So I'm not saying you got to know what he's saying is you got to know what you need and what you want. So there's women out there that go, I just want my man to lead. I want him to make good money. I want us to have a family. I want to stay home with the kids. I don't want to work. I want to take care of the household chores. That's actually valuable for her to know, to not get wrapped up in maybe watching a movie and going, oh, I need to be more. I need to be more ambitious, or I don't want to just stay at home and be the stay-at-home mom. If that's what she wants, to be upfront with what she needs and what she wants, she's going to be more likely to find a husband that in that light and to be upfront about it. Then they're going to have more success in their relationship. Now, if you have a relationship where both people are business professionals and they hold very high stature in their companies and they're putting their purpose first, there's going to be less quality time. Now, this is another one that gets lost, okay? A lot of times when people break up, they've gotten a new job or they've started doing something new with their free time, like hanging around a friend that's single, okay? So what happens in a good relationship is there's a consistency on both ends of where they spend time, right? I bet, and I haven't had study or research on this, a lot of relationships that are 20, 30, 40 years, the people had a job for a long period of time within that group or a role that they play. For example, right? If the couple both have jobs or careers that they know what their hours are going to be, they know what their pay is going to be, they're very happy with them, they know when their time's off, they know that Saturday and Sunday are going to be their times to spend together, they're more apt to probably be together longer term because the certainty involved and the predictability actually breeds a little bit of comfort in the relationship as far as compared to someone that's in a job where they might work 12 hours in a day, come home, they're completely spent, they have no energy to deal with you or your problems, and really the relationship's not as important as making money or their job, right? All right, let's get back to this.
Really important. And then once you do that, you can create the relationship you want. I've seen that over and over again. And people are different. But I think that ultimately, I mean, right, it's there's the dopamine phase of a relationship, and then there's the serotonin phase, the kind of more mutuality, coziness, and sweetness. There's a great book about how to make sure that the dopamine component and the serotonin component, so to speak, go on forever. And it has to do with, when you first meet someone and you're attracted to them, you're essentially objectifying them. Meaning, not in the way people might think, you are not dependent on them for emotional stability or survival. As you get close with somebody, you really come to depend on them, and then you tend to objectify them less. And so this book, the book is, the name is kind of corny, but it's written by an analyst again. It's called Can Love Last? And it's a book about how really good, strong relationships are the consequence of people constantly moving through this dependency objectification dynamic. And I use those words in the true, in the psychological sense, not in the way they're typically thrown around nowadays. So the idea, in some cultures, men and women will only touch for 2 weeks out of the month. And then for the other 2 weeks, the excitement and the sensuality and the sexuality is very heightened. And then they go back to this kind of distancing. Now, I don't think that's feasible for most people, but if you look statistically, those relationships tend to last a very long time with at least reported mutual feelings of intense attraction for many, many, many decades. So human beings need to learn how to at least understand and control these dynamics. And there's a lot of divorce, there's a lot of cheating, there's a lot of stuff out there. It'd be great if people could resolve some of this stuff inside of the relationship, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this kind of intense attraction,
It's kind of a broad thing to say. Well, I'd love for people to work out their divorces and their problems within the relationship, of course, right? But here's the interesting thing. When you say that, have you ever had the problems that other people have had? That's what's really interesting, right? But let me get back to what he said about objectifying. Objectifying is to make someone more of an object rather than more emotional, right? So a sexual object, which is not what he's saying. But I've also read Fritz Perls, who was a great, I believe he's a psychiatrist originally, but he's written a bunch of books. Gestalt therapy is what he's known for. The actual idea that in the beginning of a relationship, and what Fritz Perls actually says, which is not what Andrew Huberman's saying, is that we love parts of our partner. Now, I'm not talking about body parts. I'm saying you love the fact that they're generous. You love the fact that they're really good to their mom. You love the fact that they eat healthy. All right. And then on the flip side, you're like, I hate I hate that she eats ketchup with all her food. I hate that sometimes she could be a little bit lazy. And so when do you get to the point of unconditional love is really interesting. And what he's saying, when you're in the beginning of the relationship, which I would call the honeymoon phase in layman terms, he's saying that actually changes when love transpires, true love transpires. You get more dependent. You get more relied upon that individual for more things than just intimacy or sharing your day together. It gets deeper and deeper, right? And then you get to the ultimate goal of an old married couple that stayed together would be unconditional love. Okay, this is why when you see an old married couple, or you had grandma and grandpa and they're bickering, and ironically, correct me if I'm wrong, if someone's watching this later on, ironically, grandma's usually the one pushing around grandpa. Just that's usually how it is, and it wasn't like that in the early days. That's at least what I've noticed. But they're bickering, but they're still together. If they're in their 70s and they've been together 40, 50 years, they'll bicker. They're not getting a divorce. No one's bailing on that situation. Like, what's the percentages of that in a research thing? Because really what a good marriage is, it's a love pension. Okay? You sticking it out to get to the 70s and 80s and you have 30, 40 years together, that's pinnacle, right? And people think to themselves, oh, how did they get to that point? And a lot of them will say, oh, it was work or it was this. It's different for different people, right? But going back to that, the beginning of the relationship's objectified. It's more about the intimacy. It's more about the attraction. And then when you take step up, we live together, we get married, we have kids, we have a house payment together. You start taking on things together. But think about this, when you have kids together, now you're relied on each other on something that is a purpose that you both have. And this is why, to me, when people get into missions and purpose, a lot of times I think the original mission and purpose of a human being was probably to have kids, right? Because once someone has kids, they always say, like, my life changed so much, and now, my kids mean everything to me, and this is what I do and why I do what I do, right? So when you're in a long-term relationship, right, and you're going through different parts, and he's saying the honeymoon phase becomes more of an emotional phase where you rely more on each other. Totally different, right? And I'm saying that going back to the part where we love parts of each other. This is really interesting because the great Thomas Sowell, who's an academic also, who's not a relationship expert, one of the greatest statements I've ever heard him say is simple, and it's simplistic, is everything's a trade-off. Anything you do get or have is a trade-off. In a lot of ways, it's, I'll give you this money for this item. But when I give you this money, how hard was it to get that money? How much do I value that item? There's a trade-off, right? Some people, $100 items, nothing to them, so they don't value it as much. Relationships are a trade-off because there's going to be parts. There's going to be parts of that individual that you don't like. And then over time, you either like them less and have more of a problem with them, or you kind of massage into it and you go, that's just how they're going to be, and I can deal with that trade-off. I can deal with she's a sloppy eater. I can deal with the maybe I can't have a conversation about politics with her, and that's okay. Okay? It's a trade-off. And what's really interesting is when you hear academics talk about relationships, they still are giving you a biased answer, and they'll anecdotally mention their relationship, which is okay. It's completely human, right? But this is what I want to say is that whenever you're getting advice, most of the time, they're referencing their own experience in relationships. Now, research and study shows, okay, like we can go into these research and studies. There's a Gottman research that's, famous. A lot of these studies, 1,000 people, 100 people, 2,000 people, there's 7 billion people, right? It's like, this is beyond a drop of the human population, right? And That's really interesting to me. By the way, whenever you look at a research shows or study shows in terms of relationships, think about the cultural bias of one relationship. And when you think about culture, don't just think about race. Think about where someone lives and what city and community they live in. So whenever you look at one of these things where it's like, oh, and I'm going to show you a couple videos about this that are online right now. But think about that. All right, so staying with the topic, secret to a good relationship, I have another video I want to share. It's called Love Lessons, 125 Years. It's only about a 3-minute video. And it's really interesting because you think, well, these people have been married for so long, they have something to say. So these are people that have been married 40, 50 years. You can just tell by their age. And basically, they're talking about what worked for their relationship. And it's different for different people. That's the big thing here. Okay? So you're going to be looking at this and you're going to go, oh yeah, this is the secret to a great relationship. This is the secret to a great relationship. It's different for different people because different people have different values. You're never going to get over that fact. And so when someone gives, this is the secret to a good relationship, according to Adrew Huberman. Adrew Huberman got 1,000% of respect for the guy, right? And I liked his answer. It's not going to apply to everyone. It's absolutely not going to apply to everyone. So let me show you this video real quick and let me know. We got 2 on deck right now. It was I haven't done a live stream in a while, but if you have any points of view on this, anyone that's on deck right now, secret to a good relationship, throw it in the comments. And I'm going to pull up this video real quick. So let's get this up. Love how you can share the screen here. Now this is an interesting take.
We've been married for 51 years.
54 years.
We're celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary this year. Friday the 13th turned out to be the luckiest day of my life.
I think what I love the most about Bruce is he's very kind.
She's a good cook.
Serene.
She's a very compassionate person.
She is truly the person I always wanted to be.
I love it. She is the epitome of serenity.
Oh, one surprise to me about marriage after all these years has been what a joy it is at this stage.
I didn't know that it would be that wonderful again as it was, before we had all these little screaming Mimis.
Well, it's not easy.
Well, and the
And
biggest
if anybody thinks that you're going to be on your honeymoon for 51 years, it's ridiculous.
Sometimes the tunnel's pretty long.
Yeah, and dark.
Well, it has been an enjoyable challenge because I've been introduced into a culture that I was just totally ignorant of.
It was very hard for her, I know
Yeah.
that. What
But
hurt so much?
You. I think I had to have been in my 30s or early 40s. I just thought, this is it? This isn't fun.
It didn't matter to me that Jim wasn't a member of the church because I loved him very much. And I thought if I only lived with him for this time only, then that was what I would be happy with. But a couple of years later, when our children started to come along, I realized that was not true, that I wanted to be with my children and him forever.
Really, the only reason it worked in those early years is we both loved the Lord, and we taught our children to love the Lord.
The secret to anything, I think, holding to the rod. If you hold to the rod and don't give up when things are hard, there's always a way through. President Hinckley always said it, that this will pass and that things will get better. And things always do get better.
So you have to.
Really interesting. She's saying hold the rod is the secret of a relationship long term. So anyone out there wondering how to be in a relationship long term, 50 something on years, hold the rod, right? No pun intended. But what's interesting about this little video, Love Lessons, 125 Years of Marriage Advice in 3 minutes, right? Okay, have you noticed something about these couples? They're valuing different things. Their secret to the long marriage is actually different, right? And interestingly enough, none of them are mentioning attraction as being the hallmark. It's more about sticking to it, sticking through the tough times. Like one couple saying it has to do with both of them being religious. One couple saying, the one guy with the Asian woman saying how serene and how complimentary she is, and it was an enjoyable challenge, where someone else is like, the tunnel was really long, right? Someone else is saying, oh, it was great all the way through, and someone else is saying, like, you could see in this guy's body language right here, it wasn't all great. He's even a little bit stern. He doesn't even seem happy talking about it that much. But the reality is they stayed together, right? And now they're in their glory years, and they're happy they stuck it out. And the interesting thing, like I said, if someone says, oh, the secret to a long relationship is this, they're just going to tell you what the secret to a long relationship is to them, and it's not going to apply to you all the time, right? There's another video where Jordan Peterson talks about, what's the most important thing in a long relationship. He's like, honesty. It's like, that's a pretty good one. How many people lie in a relationship or have done it and had a long relationship, right? So, getting into this, anytime you see some of these buzzwords and you see someone you respect, like I said, I would come back with a nice simplistic idea of just taking a range of a scale of 1 to 10 of what your trust is, what your attraction is, and what your connection is. And those things are going to change over time, but trust shouldn't change. I would say that trust is paramount. And the idea that knowing your roles in the relationship and liking that that's okay, that, I do the cooking, you do the cleaning. Having some roles set in place that you're both happy with. And I think what's happened now is a lot of times people, if they're uncomfortable or unhappy or something goes wrong, it's like society is built now that you can have a quick fix for a lot of different things, and you don't have to stick it out with things that aren't fun or good all the time. So let me just finish this video really quick.
To be patient and loving and see where it goes.
Yeah.
You're going to have ups and downs, but it's worth it.
You cannot change someone to fit the mold you want them to be.
I just respect his space and he respects my space. Love him where he is.
Be sure to buy 2 tubes of toothpaste.
Well, I will say you are the love of my life. And I'm so grateful that we have stuck it out this long, and I see us together another gazillion or Google. Do you say Google now?
She's my babe.
Yep. So just getting into this, like I said, this is one of those things where you can answer this 5-10 different ways with 5-10 different people. I want you to think about what's important to you in your own relationship, and that's really important here, because you just notice right here, whoever you get this advice from, you still have to think, what do I value? What's important to me? What do I really want in a relationship? And so I think a lot of times you hear the term like write out a partner, write out what you want, what their job is, their personality and whatnot. It's actually pretty important to do something of that scope. Otherwise, you're just going to be an opportunist. Now, people can get in a relationship just like a job. And maybe that's a bad comparison, but they can get into a job and they can get better at it. And then in turn, while they're getting better at it, they start to like it more, right? And I think with marriage, that's probably true. I know in relationships long-term that I've been in, you start to appreciate some things and you start to depreciate some things that become repetitive, right? So I have one more video I was going to share about advice for strong relationships with Jordan Peterson, and get that on deck. Let me know in the comments if you watch this later on if you liked any of these reaction videos or this long format of doing this in a live stream. Let's get into it.
To people who are looking to have a strong and meaningful and lasting relationship with someone?
Well, the first thing is to decide if that is really what you want.
Is that
You know,
fair,
and-
do you think, to say, I want to be single forever? Do you think that's realistic or fair assessment of oneself?
I think that that's, for most people, a pathway to insanity.
Yeah.
You know, the psychoanalysts used to think that, and we all think this way in some ways, that you're sane because you're well put together. Your psyche is well structured, right? It's internal, somehow inside your head. But, and there's some truth in that, but here's a more accurate viewpoint, I think. You outsource most of your sanity because it's too complicated. And so what you do is your parents raise you to be vaguely acceptable to other people. And then you're surrounded by other people your whole life. And then every time you go off the rails a little bit, even just a little bit, people signal to you. Like you make a joke, it's not that funny, and people don't laugh. And you think, oh, well, you know, I should probably rethink my sense of humor a little bit or pay more attention. Or you tell a rambling story and you notice that everyone's like lost in the distance. And so if you're civilized enough so that people don't shun you, and you have people around you, then they're going to be always telling you how to not be too insane. Well, if you're alone, you drift.
Right.
You drift,
Right.
you know, and you'll drift in the direction of your biggest weakness. And so, you know, there are some people, maybe they're introverted and disagreeable. They're not cut out for a lot of social contact. But we're social animals, man, right to the core.
Sure.
And it's a suboptimal solution for the vast majority of people. I think that people are having a harder time finding, like, let's call them more permanent relationships, is because it's become increasingly easy to have fleeting, casual sexual relationships. I mean, Tinder is a revolution, right? It's a revolution in sexual behavior, and it's certainly not obvious that it's
Is it a social thing? Is it just technology? Is this what people want to be doing? Because you think the
It's
fleeting,
easier.
yeah,
in some ways.
but the technology has enabled this fleeting sexual.
Oh,
activity.
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. And that's,
But-
we don't want to underestimate how radical a technology that is. That's especially for men.
I do feel that deep down that all these people, men and women alike, are always longing for something more meaningful.
Well, I think that that's generally the case. I mean, you know, part of the reason for a relationship is sexual contact, obviously. Well, that's that you don't necessarily need a relationship for that. But that's not the reason to be with someone. The reason to be with someone, when there's a lot of them. So one is, well, kids who have two parents do far better, period. The data on that is crystal clear. It doesn't mean that there aren't many single parents who struggle to do a wonderful job. Right? That's not the same thing. It's an average issue. So you need, plus, it's a lot of work to have kids. You know, you kind of need to divide up the labor, especially in the first year or two, you know, because the woman is completely overwhelmed in the first year, and she needs somebody around to take care of her while she's taking care of the kid, fundamentally, or at least that's the way it looks to me. So there's that. You need the stable basis for children, and it takes them a long time to mature, and they need to learn that relationships are trustworthy, right? So there's utility and stability there. But then also, you kind of want to tangle your life together with someone, you know, because you have someone to, well, it's like two ropes that are tangled together. It's stronger, especially during times of weakness. And you have two brains instead of one, and that actually turns out to be really helpful when things are complicated. And it builds a solidity into your life and a reality into your life to have someone who's along with you on this very long voyage. And so I think that deepens your life in a way that isn't really possible with fragmentary relationships as a single person.
Definitely.
And then there's more to it than that. It's like, I think of wrestling. There's this scene in the Old Testament where Jacob wrestles with an angel. It's he's wrestling with God, actually, which is quite an interesting. That's what Israel means, right? Wrestling with God. Yeah, that just blew me away when I learned it. It's so
Is that true?
The true people of
Hebrew?
Israel are those who wrestle with God.
Wrestle
Yeah,
with
it's
God.
not believe exactly. It's a whole different thing, man. It's a whole different thing. And
Isn't
so,
it like fear from God? What it means? That's what I thought.
well, it did from the work I did in the last couple of months looking at this, and I looked into it quite deeply. It does mean wrestling, essentially, and it does derive from that scene in the Old Testament where Jacob wrestles with God. That's when he gets the name Israel. And his hip is dislocated, right? Permanently. He has a permanent limp after that. It's no joke. But I think of marriage the same way. Like people think, well, they lived happily ever after. It's like, that's not what you want in a marriage.
Yeah.
You want someone to contend with, you know, because you learn through that wrestling, you know, like you learn where you're an idiot and where you should stop being and vice versa. So that's the spiritual aspect of marriage. It's the fact that you have to contend with someone under all sorts of circumstances, theoretically is what would you say? It's a manner of promoting psychological, or you could say spiritual growth. And it's genuine. You know, that's why marriage is a sacrament in most human communities, right? It's stamped both by the state and by the sacred authorities, because it's not just a physiological union. That's what animals do. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with the physiological union, but it has to be placed in the context of everything else a human being is. And I do think it's dreadful for people not to have that. And
do you think it's become harder for people to have meaningful, lasting relationships, or has it always been this hard? I feel like I thank God that I'm not dating now, because I feel like it seems like it's miserable out there right now.
Well, it's
to
hard.
try to meet people.
It is hard although, you know, it's easier to meet people because there's more ways of meeting them.
Right.
But the ways of meeting them are more shallow. In my clinical practice, I would say that the rise of the internet dating option has actually overall been good for people who are looking for a partner. Now, there is some speculation and some evidence that it lowers the transaction price of separation and divorce. You know, because one of the reasons you don't separate or you don't get divorced is like, well, you're going to find someone else. And if it's easier to find someone else, then perhaps you're more tempted to sever the relationships.
So right here you have both of these guys are married, I believe, and him saying like, oh, it just must be terrifying to be dating right now. I mean, where is this coming from? So people hear this sometimes and they go, oh yeah, they agree with it, and then they don't date. Dating overall, if you haven't done it in a while, if you've been in a 5-10 year relationship, it's going to be hard because you haven't done it in a while. It's like if you went to go ride a bicycle again, if you did anything that you've done before and you haven't done it in a while, it's going to be hard. And it's going to be something you don't want to get back into because you've been away from it for a little while. So, but this idea that dating apps are against you or it makes it harder, yeah, there's more casual relationships, but I've noticed it's just a different way of fishing. Okay, it's a different way of going about it. But for some people that, for example, aren't the best looking, don't have the most options, don't have the most going for them, maybe their funds aren't great, they're actually more likely able to find someone else at their level online a little bit more passively because their confidence is a little bit low than not. I've seen these couples where like there's all this stuff online, high value man, high value woman, whoever makes that judgment, whatever. Okay. I mean, the statement high value man is such a general term, and it's going to be, where's the Webster's definition of high value man? Someone's going to define it differently for different people, but if it's money, looks, My point is there's people out there that don't look great, don't have great habits, but have a job, they're getting by in life, they're at the lower end of the totem pole. Wouldn't a dating app be something that they could meet someone else in their ballpark, if you will, easier, more passive than, and surely they're not going to get as many likes, swipes, or messages, but someone else that identifies them, wow, we're in the same ballpark, we're in the same vicinity. I've seen this being a breakup coach. I've seen people that probably aren't going to have as many options as other people, and they know it. They know it. I've witnessed it. I've seen a marriage where I'm like, wow, these two met someone. They met each other online. It just takes longer. Going back to what he's saying about, he's been married a long period of time, Jordan Peterson. Highly, highly respect Jordan Peterson as a teacher, as an author, as a speaker. He's a highly intelligent individual. He's only been married once. I believe he married, I don't even want to say his high school sweetheart, but a woman that grew up across the street from him. Okay? And so he looks at marriage in a way that's a positive. They had kids together. They've stayed together. I don't know all the ups and downs that he's been through, right? But some other guy could easily marry his high school sweetheart, someone from his neighborhood, and it was rose petals and wine glasses for 20 years, and that woman could meet someone at work and leave him. Now, why am I saying this? It's not to say that this happens all the time. I'm just saying that possibility is there, right? That possibility's never hit Jordan Peterson, and he might be thinking, well, I've always been a good husband. I've always done everything that's right. Yeah, I'm with you, right? I'm with you. But you, knowing this from dealing in breakups, you could do everything right as a partner on paper. You could read, every relationship book out there. You can get communication correct, and someone can leave you. That's just the reality. Someone can leave you because they met someone else. Someone could leave you because they're bored. Okay? Like Warren Buffett's a good example. I don't know his relationship in and out. This guy's massively wealthy, massively successful. I believe his wife could probably do whatever she wants at home, right? They had kids together. I don't know the dynamics of all that. But when he got older, she went and lived in another state, I believe, and just had her own life and did her charity, and it was hard on him. And eventually, they basically kind of got a divorce. Like they had this separation, right? And he said it was one of the hardest things he's ever dealt with in an interview. Now, someone's like, oh, my point is, Jordan Peterson giving his opinion on marriage and relationships is a reflection of how his has worked out also. Now, he's got a private practice where he deals with a lot of people, right? And so he has some insight that the average bear doesn't. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why his opinion's respected. That being said, he's still going to be a little bit biased that he's had a good wife, a good life with her, and overall they stuck it out. Now, let's just think about this for a minute. If he was together 15, 20 years and she met someone that swept her off her feet and she left him, would he be as cozy to a long-term marriage or a long-term partner? Probably not. And this is why you have a community of people that are bitter, that are upset, because what happened to them in a marriage or a relationship shocked the hell out of them. It was like getting it was like being at an intersection and someone running a red light and hitting you. It's like, wait a minute, we had a good relationship, we were married, we've been together. You're not supposed to do this. We're supposed to stick it out. But they got left. And there's so many different reasons and little microcosms of why someone leaves or why someone breaks up. But I'm saying, like, think about it like this. Have you witnessed in your friends, family, or colleagues, and put it in the comments, where from the outside, a couple you knew ends up breaking up, and it's like shocking. Wow, them? Like Pam and John, they seem so good together. How did that happen? And you go, John's such a good, or, right? John's such a good guy. I can't believe Pam left him for the pool boy. Now, I can't believe this is what's different now, right? These things happen. This is like when someone's like, oh, you got to keep dating. You got to keep doing this. Relationships long term are going to have some twists and turns. And just like anything else, just like when someone starts a business and they go, everything went right for me. Someone else starts the same business and one thing went wrong and it never got off its feet again. Right? There's timing and there's circumstances. So when you get these opinions on the secret of a great relationship or if you should stay single or not, they're going to mix in their personal experience. right? They're going to say like, well, you know, you don't have to get married or you do have to do this, right? And everyone does that. What I want to suggest to you as an individual is make sure you get really honest with your morals and values and what you really want. And the idea that at some point, even if you do quote unquote everything right, that person could possibly leave you, and eventually they will leave you because one of you are going to pass away, right? Now, going back to this, he makes some great points. And his points are really well taken in the sense that it's better to have a partner to go through things long term. And he's looking at that. I think what's different here, right? And you got to look at society overall and culture overall. And the thing about society and culture overall, they're melding more and more together because of the internet, right? Everyone has access to the same stars, the same videos on YouTube and these kinds of things. And what leads the day on these things? Sex, hotness, being about you, being about your purpose, putting yourself first, right? There's some good parts to that. Doesn't really line up with marriage, right? Doesn't really line up with long-term partners. I'm going to do me. As long as I make my money. Does that, I mean, that's a big message now, right? And a lot of people like go towards that, right? As long as I got my money, as long as I'm doing this, I'm fine. What Jordan Peterson's saying is there's going to be some moments. There's going to be some moments in your life where you go, God, it would be nice to have someone by my side, like that girlfriend that I had for 4 or 5 years that we shared so much together. We were so deep together that I could tell her anything. I could be vulnerable. I could be upset. I can give her any background of how I'm feeling, and she's there for me. There's something to that. And now you have these personalities sometimes on Instagram and YouTube and whatnot, and they're great to watch. They're great characters. They're great characters. I watch them sometimes. It's fantastic, right? It's fantastic theater of I've got a Lamborghini, I've got a Ferrari, I'm smoking cigars, I got a great body. You know what? Fuck the world. I'm doing me. And that's what you should be doing too. Cool, man. I'm the one that's wrong. Take a step back when you watch this stuff and ask yourself, what are my morals and values? Does it really line up with this? By the way, everyone meets their match. And let me explain that. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Anyone I've ever known, I'm 41 years old. I don't know everything, but I know a little bit more than I knew when I was 25, 30 years old. Okay. Especially doing what I've been doing for a long time with coaching and meeting people from around the world and talking about their relationships. Especially being a university teacher for 10 years and having 200 students a term. I know some things about human behavior and whatnot. And everyone meets their match. Some people call it karma, right? I believe in karma as a choice because I believe it's good to believe in karma. I believe it's good to believe that if I do good things, I'll get good things. If I treat people well, people will treat me well. I think it's a good concept. Now, there's no science behind it. There's no research that backs karma, but I think it's a good thing to believe. Now, saying that, someone will go, I know people that are great people that have bad things happen to them. All right, we can go into that all the time. Let's just push karma to the side. You don't believe in it, you believe in it, whatever. Let's just say this. Everyone gets humbled. Think about that for a minute. Put it in the comments below in your life. If you were riding high, you were doing great in your life, and this has happened to me a few times. Whether it's making money, whether it's seeing, multiple women and just feeling like, man, I'm on right now. I can't be stopped. I'm doing really well, right? And that's not to say that, not to enjoy that part of your life. Everyone gets humbled. Everyone. Relationship-wise, money-wise, and eventually when you die. This is when people are like, they're on their deathbed. How humble is an individual when they're on their deathbed? Are they making demands? Are they smoking cigars, bragging about something? It's the ultimate moment of humbleness, if that's a word, right? And so everyone fucking gets humbled. And when you get humbled, who's going to be there with you? Right? When you're talking, are you going to go to your car, your Lamborghini, and take a picture? Because those moments where you go, wow, I'm not as great as I thought I was. I'm not bulletproof. This person hurt me. This person did me wrong. And in the scan of relationships, someone that is a player, whether that's a woman or a man, because there's plenty of women out there that are playing a bunch of guys too. That's fine. It's your prerogative. It's a good life experience. And a lot of times people need to get that out of their system. It's part of culture now. I know I did, right? Afterwards you feel like, oh, I got that out of my system. I was able to hook up, people talk about body counts and different things like that. The reality is, there's a lot of people that want their body counts up. Body counts for those people out there is how many people you slept with, right? And they're like, wow, I haven't had enough experience. The reality of that, I've talked to people about this before. Think about it like this. Can you even recall the details of everyone you slept with, even if it's 5 people or 20 people or 15? Can you relive that moment passionately? When you talk about manifestation and dreams and different things, I mean, could you bring that moment back and feel it again? Not really. I mean, the only thing you have is to say, yeah, I've hooked up with, 50 women. Yeah, I've hooked, that's what I've been doing. You can't bring back that moment and relive it and feel it, right? Sex is great. I'm not against it. I like it myself. But you can't, if you said, oh, I've been with, some of these YouTube, I've been with 1,000 women. I know. It's like, how are you? I mean, is it that impressive? I mean, that's your private moments. And by the way, the more you have of something like that, just like the more of anything, the more times that it wasn't that great, right? And you're just telling everyone, oh, every time you have intimacy, it's outstanding. You're diluting it a little bit, right? So ringing this back in, got on a little tangent there, but the thing is, whoever you get advice from on the secret of a good relationship or advice on strong relationships, number one, make sure that there's someone that you admire and respect. Number two, realize that they're going to have some kind of bias towards their own personal experience, however objective they are. Okay? However objective they are. And so what's their background with that? And number three, like I said, if someone's had someone burn them, and this is what's tough about generalized information on this topic, on relationships. And this is what lately I've been looking more and more about different points of view more than ever before, because I'm looking for reaction videos. And the stuff that's out there is a lot of general stuff like, well, if you do this, this, and this, the relationship will last. Listen, relationships are like weather sometimes. There's just unpredictable shit that can happen. And you got to weather the storm, as cheesy as that sounds. But it's completely possible that Jordan Peterson could be who he is, know what he knows, and he could end up with a wife that left him and have a different idea of what marriage is, or have some bitterness towards that. And that's why when you have some other people out there, they're imposing this upon them, upon their platform or their audience, in the sense that, yeah, this is how I do it and this is how you should do it because it's so great. Reality is everyone's going to get humbled. Can we agree on that? Everyone is going to get humbled at some point, whether it's money, status, everyone is. No one's living a lifestyle that is going to be hands down above everyone else for the rest of the time. Okay? And so what you got to figure out, what do you really want? What are your big morals and values? If you want kids, then you got to look at marriage seriously. You got to look at, all right, is this woman that I'm with going to be a good mother? Is this woman I'm going to be with loyal? Do I trust her? Now, if you're going to be a playboy, if you're going to be out and about, then you're probably just looking at, how hot is she? Does she listen? Does she allow me to manipulate her? right? Okay, that's your prerogative. What are the consequences to that, right? Now, on the flip side, if you're like, I don't want to get into a relationship because marriage, they'll take all your money. Well, there's things like, I don't know, prenups. You can do those kinds of things. Marriage is not for you? Fine. It's like Jordan Peterson saying, a long-term partner has a lot of benefits. I find it really interesting about this one thing. He says that you have a weakness or a big weakness, and you tend to drift towards that weakness when you're alone. Possibly. And if you have a partner that can help you overcome that weakness, it's vital. Now, this is an interesting point. I want to dive a little deeper on this, and let me know in the comments if you guys gel with this. Think about this for a moment, okay? We all have weaknesses, right? A lot of times you can nail it down to, oh, I eat too much, or I drink too much, or I don't exercise, whatever. Those are the big ones, right? We all have some weaknesses that we drift to. I like how Jordan Peterson says you drift towards that weakness. And you drift towards weakness when you're having bad times, right? If you're going to get laid off at work or you got fired from work, that's when you'll have a big night out and get drunk maybe. That's when, not me, you might gorge yourself on a 12 donuts, okay? Because in lieu of pain, we go for pleasure, okay? It was really interesting in the book, Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl, the author, is in this Holocaust prison camp where people are getting starved and worked to death, literally, right? And he said one of the biggest things was people that gave up. In other words, like, we're not going to get rescued, I'm just giving up. And he said they would die within 2 or 3 days. They would have a cigarette. And cigarettes were highly valuable in this prison camp. They were almost like currency. And they would have one last cigarette, as if I'm going to have this last pleasure as I give up. It's a really interesting point. And so we go towards pleasures that could be our weakness. But when you have a partner, they can redirect the ship. Now, here's a point that I'm going to counter a little bit. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, okay? I'm going to play devil's advocate on this point, that a good partner would help you readjust the ship. Hey, you lost your job. Come home. I'll make you a meal. We'll just relax and we'll talk about it. I'm here for you. They'll calm you down. They'll be... One of the things I love about having a good girlfriend is when you're sick and they get you some food and they comfort you. They bring you an ice pack if you got a fever. That's something I just really appreciate. I really appreciate it, right? So you have this partner that's there for you, that's your rock, that when things are down, when times are down, you don't have to call up. Think about it like this. You have a weakness, you have a problem, you call up your friend's not available. You lost your job. Your friend's like, man, I'll talk to you later. I got things going on. I'm sorry to hear about that. I got to go. And how many times has this happened? And people go, fuck, man. John's not there for me. He's not even a good friend. It was timing, dude. And John's got a family and 2 kids, and they come first, even though you're best friends. But if you hit him on a Sunday afternoon when he wasn't working, maybe he would have been there for you. By the way, John's not trained in being there for someone that's his buddy, okay? So your partner, your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, long-term shit, long-term stuff here, okay? Right? You call them up, they're at home, the same place you stay. If they're a good partner, you lost your job today, they're going to find a way to be there for you. However it is their way of doing it. And sometimes it just means being present, right? And so in that moment, you have your go-to person. And this is one of the biggest things in breakups. It's like celebrating your victories and your losses with one person that you know is going to be there win, lose, or draw is a big difference than your best friend who might be having a bad day, might be battling something else. It's just not as strong. They're not going to be as available for you. And they're going to have their own things going on. But where you have a partnership, it's different. And that's what he's saying. If you have a partner, does that help overcome that weakness? Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem. If you get a partner that has too many problems and you can't really help them, sometimes there's certain problems you can't help with. And this is a big one now with all these traumas, bipolar, depression. Depression's huge right now. Oh, my girlfriend has depression. Oh, my girlfriend has depression. It's like the amount of times I've heard that, right? You're not trained to help her. She doesn't want to see a therapist. It's like, so now you're reading books, you're going on YouTube, and you're trying to play therapist, and it's not your jam. You're a photographer. It doesn't even, your attempts at it are actually making things worse. So this is when you get to a part of the relationship where one person is drifting towards their weakness or their problems way too much, and it gets to be too much. And the partner can't fix it, and they don't want the partner to fix it. And so that's when you have two unstable individuals that can't help each other. And I believe that the core of a relationship, the best part that's always going to be there is, are you there for me when times are tough? Not that you have an answer for me, but you're just fucking there. I can rely on you. I can rely on you to be there. Not to say the right thing, but to just be present, to just listen. But if someone's not overcoming a problem and they're drifting into it over and over again, right? They can't shake the problem. Sometimes the relationship will end because the other person can't fix you. And so when he says this example, it's assuming that someone chose a partner that's stable, that's not having a reoccurring problem. And I think more than ever before, people have bigger problems mentally. Mentally, people are more inclined to have trouble in relationships because of depression, anxiety, and those things are directly related to social media, the internet, pleasure seeking that's been taken to a whole nother level. This is what makes relationships not last as long. The idea of staying with someone a longer period of time, it's a great idea. But there's just going to be more breakups because the problems that people are drifting towards are just not going away. So I kind of went on a tangent on that for a little bit, but let me know, like I said, what do you think is advice for a strong relationship? What do you think is a secret to a great relationship? I think it starts with filtering for someone that's stable and someone that's up to par with your values and morals. Someone that you go, oh, I really like that she brings this to the table because it helps me in this area. Or I like that she brings this to the table because we both have an interest in it. And then the parts that you don't like, you can just deal with them because they're not that big a deal. They're not game changers, right? So I did have one more video here, the truth about love and modern relationships, that I might share. Let me know in the comments if you have any videos that you want me to react to in the future, possibly. Let's see here. Well, let's see this Jordan Peterson go through this a little bit deeper.
So maybe you lose in one place where you gain in the other. But I think there are different kinds of hard that it is. You know, it's hard for couples to figure out how to manage two careers. It's hard for women to figure out how to get educated and get their career launched at the same time that they're finding a partner and having kids. Because women have this tight time frame, you know. I mean, they've got to get a lot done by the time they're mid 30s for
Right.
sure. And so it's not much time, you know, it's like 15 years really from the time you're an adult. It's you better get at it. It's not very long.
Right.
So I think there are new challenges that have arisen that weren't there for previous generations, but previous generations had it hard in other ways.
That's very true. Yeah. Like dying
Like they
at
died,
50.
yeah. Or in childbirth, for example.
I feel like people also need to like understand how to make a relationship work. Like it's not just magic. You need to kind of put in the work to make it work.
It's hard.
You need
It's
to put in
challenging.
effort and
Yeah.
compromise a lot of times on, like if you live by yourself, you can do everything the way you would want.
Yeah.
If you live with someone else, then there's compromises to make.
Yes.
But in the long picture, it's better for you.
Well, that's it. That's it. There's sacrifices to be made in the short term.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, people have to. The effort issue is like, well, when you're in love with someone, you're going to organize your schedule and make them a priority. And, you know, that's in some ways a fleeting state, although it's not necessarily as fleeting as people think it is, but whatever. It's obviously a priority. And then you get married and, you know, you kind of get accustomed to having each other around, and then everything else is more important and the relationship drifts to the bottom. And then people get dissatisfied and they start looking for excitement and adventure otherwise. Well, you can't do that. You have to prioritize the relationship. Like my observation clinically has been for a couple to maintain their relationship without it deteriorating, they have to spend 90 minutes a week together talking about their lives, about how the house is run, about what they've all been doing to keep their stories caught up, right?
That's not really even that much.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not that much.
Yeah.
But and which is a good thing. You can actually do it. And then they need to spend at least one time having a date. And 2 is better. 1 is necessary. 2 is better. You can't aim for a lot more than that because, you know, life is very busy. And if it's going to be sustainable, it has to be realistic. But they need to make time for each other twice a week and talk in a non-romantic way, just practically about the domestic economy and about everything that's going on. And that keeps people tied to each other and updated. And so that's sort of your minimal commitment level if you don't want things to deteriorate.
So right there, I'm just going to get into this real quick. He's saying what's worked for him, what his advice. Great advice, 90 minutes. Okay, 90 minutes. You're married. The relationship takes a back seat. You got kids. You got a mortgage. Totally get it, right? Wife's not looking as attractive as she used to. You're not looking as attractive as you used to, and the relationship goes down to the back of the bus. Fine, I'm with you. That being said, there is always a possibility, and this is what I'm going to, if you've been on for a little while now listening to this, I'm going to give you some insight from handling breakups specifically for almost 5 years now. All right, I think it's been 5 years. Don't have an anniversary date on that. Talking to people from all over the world. Now, you could do those things. You could do those things and your wife or husband could still leave you or cheat with someone at work. And I'm going to be specific about work. What happens is, outside of that house that's gotten a little monotonous and a little boring, and the other thing is, you've been together 7-10 years, and I'm not even going to say that maybe one of you let yourself go and you no longer look the same. Okay, I'm not even going to go there with that. I'm just going to say their interactions outside of the house, for example, at work, is going to affect the odds of them cheating or possibly leaving you. Okay, and you can't control that. And I don't know what Jordan Peterson and his wife, he might say, well, that's a good start. 90 minutes a week. You talk about, you know, common things, chemistry, connection type building, and then go on a date or 2 dates. But if someone works with someone, think about it like this, because knowing breakups, how many people cheat with someone at work? And I've talked about this before. Certain atmospheres or certain jobs will induce cheating or someone leaving someone. Okay? So, for example, someone that works at a bar restaurant, There are later hours. There's alcohol involved. There's people there that are going to flirt with your significant other, whether that's a man or a woman, and it's just going to increase the odds of cheating. It doesn't mean you could do all the things right. Okay? You can do all the things right, but I was going to add to the secret to a great relationship, okay, is keeping in mind what environments you're going to be entangled in, your wife and you. Think about that for a minute. He's a professor. He's also got a private practice as a psychoanalyst or psychiatrist. I don't want to get that wrong for the great Mr. Peterson. But if he was a bartender at a university area bar, right, where there's a lot, he would be more likely to probably cheat or leave her for the lifestyle that he's around. Think about that for a minute. Because people are influenced by their environments, and everyone thinks about this in terms of the jungle or something, right? But the environment that you work on really is your jungle. It's where you're going to evolve and where you get credit and significance from your peers. There's a really good book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and he talks about, identifying areas where you get significant credit in your field of work. And he's a professor at Georgetown, and he's saying like writing articles and books as a professor is how you get judged, is how you get significance, is how you get clout. So he spends a lot of time in deep work writing books and doing those things. Now, if you think about it, if you're in an atmosphere like a restaurant or bar, social interactions, flirting is a lot of what goes on, right? So that person's going to get better at that, right? For some reason, another one that's very popular for people to cheat is hospitals. There's nurses, there's doctors, there's a hierarchy, there's this high level of respect. And so there's certain areas where people are more likely to stray. And that gets lost in this. And I'm not saying that you can necessarily control your partner's workspace or what they're going to do long term. But I'll tell you this, right? I'll tell you this. It's going to affect their relationship. Now, someone might say, well, you're a breakup coach. Will it affect your relationships? I'll tell you what it does for me. I filter better. I see red flags and I don't fucking ignore them. I don't go, oh yeah, that's just something I don't like. I really dissect and I think about it to myself. Is that going to be a long-term problem? Is that something that I'm just glazing over? Is that something that I see that I can't deal with, right? If I'm going into a long-term relationship, you see these things, and you can listen to people and the way they talk and the way they describe things about what and who they are, right? So I hope that helps you out there. This has been a good live stream. Hour and 20 minutes. We got 7 on deck. If anyone had a personal comment to make or a question to ask, I'll give you a few minutes here. I did have another video I was going to show at some point, but if anyone's got a question on deck, go ahead and throw it in the comments. Yeah, these were some comments that were made here. This was a good question. What's your biggest weakness that you drift to? If you have a partner, does that help overcome that weakness? Because this is something that Peterson mentioned. Does it really help? And the next, fragmentary relationships versus long-term relationships. What a great word. Sometimes academics like Jordan Peterson, they come up with these great words. Fragmentary relationships versus long-term relationships. What the hell does that even mean? right? A fragmentary relationship. It's not a hookup, it's fragmentary relationship. It's not a one night stand. Oh, you had a fragmentary relationship, right? And as I mentioned earlier, the great Andrew Huberman mentioned the biggest one being the secret to a great relationship. He didn't say it in these words. He said to get your autotonic. Now I'm losing the words here. He put it in scientific words. Basically, learn not to react emotionally, right? And it's interesting. You can't. I know you want to, but a majority of the population cannot control their emotions. Nor is it healthy to deprive yourself of completing an emotion. But making decisions or having an argument with your significant other when your viewpoint's vastly different is not a good idea. And then another one that was mentioned by Peterson, a pathway to insanity is to be single long term. True or not true? He literally used that word. Of course, he's been married forever, since he was young. So we got one more here. Dare I show you? Let's see here. The truth about love and modern relationships. I think this is a short one. I'm going to show it really quick and let's get your guys' take on it. We got 8 on deck. Let me know if you have any answers to those questions. You have any questions about this live stream so far. New style. I'm deep diving on some of these other videos and other topics about a topic like the secret to a great relationship, right? And I'm going to recap it and spin it at the end of this if you're riding till the end here. Let's get into this real quick though.
Establish with them gives us a greater sense of meaning, of happiness, of well-being than any other human experience. All of you have grown up needing both security, safety, and adventure, exploration. And if you think about how that enters into your relationships, in a couple, there is one person who is more in touch with the fear of losing the other, and one person who is more in touch with the fear of losing themselves. One person more afraid of abandonment, and one person more afraid of suffocation. Reconciling security and adventure, reconciling love and desire in one relationship has become one of the great challenges. For the past 35 years, I've been helping couples and people navigate the challenges of relationships. And until not too long ago, there was no such a thing as a couples therapist. Basically, you got together with somebody, you married, and that was it. You were stuck for life. If you didn't like it, well, you could console yourself with an early death. It was till death do us apart, not as we have it today, as till love dies. Never before has the survival of the family depended on the happiness of the couple. And this has made the couple such a central unit. Also, the unit of relationships that is probably undergoing the most changes in a very short amount of time. Never have we invested more in love, and never have we divorced or broken up more in the name of love. I imagine a world in which we can experience our relationships with a sense of vitality and aliveness and vibrancy, because I live with one perennial truth. The quality of your relationships is what determines the quality of your life. And the bonds and the connections that we make with other people, that we establish with them, gives us a greater sense of meaning, of happiness, of well-being than any other human experience.
All right, so Esther Perl's PhD, New York psychoanalyst, psychiatrist, numerous books. She's well known for supporting the idea that cheating's very common and there's a place for it. Human relation. This is the kind of general stuff that a lot of people could relate to. That your relationships really count. I'm going to be honest. When I watch, it's interesting watching a video with the live stream like this. I'm sensitive to accent sometimes. I think she's brilliant, and the accent sometimes, the way the words come out bugs me a little bit. It's kind of interesting because I'm an audible person, and that counts. That being said, she's got some insight about it, and this is really interesting because it's like she's talking about relationships overall. So I'm thinking friendships, family relationships, not just romantic relationships. I think the tough thing about a romantic relationship, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, is they're the person you eventually live with, you share so much. It's an elevated relationship above brother, sister, mother, father. And some people might go, no, my mom comes first, this comes first. But eventually, if those relationships, but it also is probably the most delicate in the sense that you can break up. You don't break up with your parents per se unless you make that decision. I guess I take that back. There's some people that don't talk to their parents, right? Some people that don't talk to someone ever again. And so relationships are so important, but I think what's tough is there's all this weight put on it, especially with marriage, and now people just don't stick it out as long. They find a reason to get out. They get back on a dating app, or I'm going to say it. The other part is being pitched, being on the internet, just being on the internet, right? It's like yesterday I was in a coffee shop. I was talking to a friend about this. And there's 8 people in this coffee shop. It wasn't roaring or that, busy. Everyone, including the couples, are on their phone or on their computer. Everyone. And I'm not talking about a little bit. And everyone that walked in with a bag, with a laptop, or like I said, they pulled out their phones. Now, someone's like, oh, that's a shame. Oh, that's, I wish it wasn't like that. And they might say, and the funny thing is people always go, oh my God, I can't believe that person's letting their kid play on their iPhone or their iPad and their kid's just, it's done, folks. Like that's going to be done that's the babysitter. Like even people that don't want their kids on it, it's crack for kids, really, to be on a phone and be entertained by that, right? But here's the thing. The people that look at the kids and are like, oh my God, they're spending just as much time. And you might go, well, what about you? I honestly don't spend that much time on the phone. But now I found myself this last year, a little bit more. Here's what I do notice, like Instagram, YouTube, ads everywhere. My email, I get email pitches for all the time. People trying to sell me that they're going to edit my videos, that they're going to help me with my business. Ads. I can help you. I can do better. You can do better. I can help you. You can do better. You can buy this. You can buy that. You can buy this. You can eat this better food. You can eat this better food. This can. Now, do you think that affects people in relationships? All these sales pitches are abundance, variety. You can do better. You can do better. You can do better. You can have more. You can have more. Does this affect you in a monogamous relationship? How's that going to get stopped? I don't know. I think it's imperative when you have a partner, if you look at their amount of social media that they consume and what their content consumption is. Like, don't overlook what their content consumption is, because that's how they're going to That's how they're going to, that's basically their teacher. That's basically going to be their program. Right? It's like the red pill movement, right? So there's some guys that are like rah on that. And if that guy's in a relationship, he's going to follow those rules, which is completely up to him, and maybe it works for his wife. But it's not to be overlooked in a dating situation, the content someone's consuming, because it's gonna support how they act and how they make decisions, right? Let's just watch this a little further.
Relationships at this moment are undergoing such a massive shift. The norms are literally changing under our feet, and we have to make up the rule book as we go. You know, for a long time, our relationships were pretty simple because they were dictated by rules. Religion had clear strictures, and social hierarchy was also very clear, and it told us how parents had to talk to the kids, how children had to respond to adults, how husbands had to talk to their wives, and how wives didn't have to answer their husbands. All the decisions were made for us, the big decisions. Who was going to be the breadwinner? Who was going to wake up at night to feed the baby? Who has the right to demand for sex? What you did is what your father did. And at this moment, we have unraveled this system, and we have created a world of options and choices and unprecedented freedom. But as a result, we have to negotiate everything. It's all up for grabs. It's no longer clear who's going to be the breadwinner. In fact, whose career is going to take priority at this time? Who's going to wake up tomorrow morning to feed the baby? Who's responsible for initiating sex next time? Who's going to plan the date? What gender should I be dating? How many people should I be dating at the same time? Should I tell them about the others? Am I ready to have children? Do I even want to have children? Should I move east? Should I move west? Where am I going to go on vacation next? Are my needs getting met in this relationship? Am I happy? Am I happy enough? All these big decisions that have burdened the selves like never before, we have to figure it all out. And because of that, conversations have become the heart of relationships. We have to talk about stuff that we've never talked about, that we don't know how to talk about, that we don't have the vocabulary to talk about, and most of the time we've even never said it to ourselves. This shift from the collective life, where we had belonging, but very little freedom, to where we have a lot of freedom, but everywhere we talk about relationships today, we hear about the fact that we no longer have a deep sense of anchoring and belonging and rootedness like we used to have, and that we are facing a modern massive epidemic of loneliness, which in America today has become the #1 public health crisis, more than obesity. A few other major changes took place. In the old model, when marriage was primarily an economic enterprise, intimacy had to do with sharing the life together. You milked the cows, you watered the land, you raised the children. It was about economy. But today, when I talk about intimacy, I talk about it as into me, see. And what I bring to you is not my dowry, it's not my commercial assets. I bring to you my inner life. I bring to you my wishes, my feelings, my aspirations, my anxieties. And when I talk to you, I want you to look at me. Know this. I want contact. I want connection. I want you to make me feel that I matter. I want you to reflect and validate me. And I want to transcend this life of growing atomization. I also want you to help me, or to help together actually, achieve what is probably one of the most amazing challenges of relationships today. This is where we want to bring under one roof contradictory ideals and contradictory needs. On the one hand, our need for security, for rootedness, for belonging, for anchor, for predictability, for safety, and on the other end, our need for adventure and novelty and change and mystery. Every living organism straddles this polarity between change and stability. Every person, every relationship, every company. And thriving relationships are the ones who know how to reconcile these two fundamental sets of human needs. If you think for a moment, all of you have grown up needing both. Security, safety, and adventure, exploration. And some of you may have come of your childhood needing more protection. And some of you may have come out of your childhood needing more space and autonomy. And if you think about how that enters into your relationships, you will notice that very often in a couple, there is one person who is more in touch with the fear of losing the other, and one person who is more in touch with the fear of losing themselves. One person more afraid of abandonment, and one person more afraid of suffocation. Reconciling security and adventure, reconciling love and desire in one relationship has become one of the great challenges. We today, when we look for that person with whom we want to have everything, we call that person the soulmate. Have you heard of the soulmate? How many of you think that you're looking for a soulmate, or have found a soulmate, or are living with your soulmate? You know, the thing that really interested me about the soulmate is that it's called the one and only, all of that. But the soulmate was an interesting concept because for most of history, the soulmate meant God, not another human being. And in our secularized society in the West, we have basically taken romantic love to replace the role of religion many times. We look to our partners to give us transcendence and meaning and ecstasy and wholeness, all these things that we used to look for in the perfect world of the divine. But the way we're looking for this soulmate is mired in a romantic consumption economy. I am going to look for the one and only through that thing where I have 1,000 people at my fingertips. What does it mean to look for the one and only in the swiping culture? In the village, you had 2 choices. Later, you had 6 choices. Now you have 1,000 choices. Do you know what it means to me, the one? The one means that this is the one that's going to cure you of your case of FOMO. When I find you, I no longer think I could do better. Phenomenal. We have very few guidelines and a lot of options. And all these options are giving us quite a bit of uncertainty and quite a bit of self-doubt as well. When we talk about sex, which is really an enormous series of changes that have taken place in relationships. First of all, there are 3 primary sexual revolutions. The advent of contraception, without which women could never experience sexuality, without women and men could never experience the freedom of separating sex from reproduction. The women's movement, which took on the abuses of power, and the gay movement, which introduced the concept of sexual identity. For most of history, sexuality was seen as a part of our biology. Today, we have socialized it. It is a part of who we are, of our identity, of how I see myself, of how I express myself. It is a sovereign piece of who I am, and for that matter, it has become a fundamental human right. We no longer just have sex for reproduction, neither is it in long-term relationships or in relationships that are with some length. And it is no longer just a woman's marital duty. Today, sexuality, especially after 2 kids, if you have 2 or 3, which is the average Western thing, it's basically for pleasure and connection, no other motive. So it better be good. Because in order to want sex, it needs to be sex that is worth wanting. This is really a major shift to have sexuality that is based only on my wanting, which is the definition of desire, is to own the wanting. And hopefully I want you and you want me, and it happens to be at the same time. It's a lot of conditions to fulfill.
Wow. It is a lot of conditions. I met my boyfriend online 9 years ago, so yes, we're soulmates meant to be met on the internet. So she unpacks a few different things here. Timing is big. I think that's underrated a lot of times. People in long-term relationships, if I was going to write a book, which I've talked about for a long time, one chapter would actually talk about the fact that if you're in a long-term relationship, really looking at what your schedules are like. And that sounds like something someone would be like, what? So the type of job you both have or are going to have long-term, whether that's a career or not. Obviously this is getting a little deeper and off on a tangent once again, but whatever you choose to do, right? Everyone's, make it your passion. You have to like it. Do you have significance? Are you important at your job? Are you good at what you do? This breeds confidence, self-esteem, all right? And a woman or a man could be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad with the kids and have significance, uber significance, okay? But the idea that what she just said was very true. So if you look at a relationship, they're still, let's just say that they're still attracted to each other. They've been together 10 years, but their shifts are completely different and their jobs are different. Where let's say the man has a job where it's very hard on his body. He's very tired all the time and whatnot. And the woman has a job where she has long hours, and they just, when they do see each other, they're spent. Okay, having sexual relationships in your 30s and 40s, are you going to have the energy post-work? It's not just about attraction. Now, on the flip side, one thing she doesn't mention is the effect that men like variety, the Coolidge effect, which I've mentioned before. I'll do a video on that in the future. But the Coolidge effect is basically saying that men will always be more turned on by a new woman or a new choice than the same one that they have all the time. That's factual, that they'll get more excited over a variety of choices. Now, it's obvious, like, if you're in a honeymoon phase for 2 years or a year and a half, maybe that's not completely the case. But that being said, if your relationship is one where I had a relationship in the past where my girlfriend at the time, we're not together anymore, but it was a good relationship. She worked at a university, and then she worked at a restaurant at night that was her family's restaurant, so she felt obligated to do so. She'd come home at 10:30, 11, tired, bring food home because she'd want to eat after work. And, on the outside, it's like hard worker, family-oriented, but it was like, damn, we don't have time to spend together. Like, you're at home at 10:30, 11, you're tired. I have to literally wake myself up to hang out. And it would affect intimacy. I wouldn't, and because of timing, because of scheduling. And so, and nowadays people work at home a lot or from the computer, and some people will be like, oh, that would be better. Well, if you're both working from home, I've heard of breakups happen because of that. So considering timing and schedule and making time when both of you are in a good mood, you haven't been in traffic, is really, I think, significantly overlooked. It really is. Because when I look at couples that do really well, their schedules line up and each of them have significant time where they're not in a bad mood. Right? Because people do a lot of things during the week sometimes. I'm a pretty jovial, outgoing person, but I have bad days. I had worse days when I had jobs I didn't like when I was younger. Now think about that. It really counts. No, I believe that everyone is compatible with any individual, but some are much more compatible with others. I've fallen in love twice, so might say I've had 2 soulmates. In regards to soulmates, I just asked the question, do you believe in soulmates? Point blank before, I would just say no. If I was to believe in soulmates, I would believe in them with an S. I would say that there's more than one. If you believe in past lives, if you're going to believe in soulmates, then you got to go into past lives and things like that. And that's one of those things that I'm more open to now that I've done hypnotherapy for a while, and I've done a past lives situation where I've seen a couple of my past lives, and it's pretty interesting, actually. A whole other topic to get into another time, but I'm not sure on the soulmate thing. But if someone believes in soulmates, good for you. I think it's a good thing to believe in. I also believe the fact that, just like Elle just said, there's two or three of them. That's not necessarily limited to one soulmate. Because that would eliminate the fact that if it doesn't work out, that you have no chance of meeting someone that lines up with you again. I will say this, however you want to frame it or label it, there are times when you meet someone and you think, damn, we're lined up. Like, and the thing is, those cases are rare. This is why it's special. But a lot of people don't end up settling in with the person that lines up like that because they don't want to deal with the search. Because if you, let's say you're single, it might take you 2 or 3 years to find that person that lines up with you. I had a client like this a while back, and he was just telling me his process and his system of dating and doing online dating. He says it took him like 2.5 years, and he found, he didn't call it a soulmate, he's a New Yorker, and he was like, I basically went on dates, online dates. He goes, I had a system where we'd meet for a drink, so it would be the same kind of thing each time. Meet for a drink after work, like 5:30, 6:30, get to know each other, maybe have dinner from there. And he's like, he had all these crazy bad date stories. And then he's like, I met this woman, I'm a professor, she's a professor, she does, like, they just lined up. They just lined up. So I'm saying that I think what gets lost in finding your soulmate is actually dealing with the search, filtering out the non-contenders. All right, folks, this has been really nice today to get back on deck. An hour and 47 minutes. Let me know in the comments, do you like me referencing these reaction videos and going into them? Is there a topic that you'd want me to touch on in the future? I think it's really interesting to watch some of this with the live stream and get into it because there's just so much out there now on YouTube, right? There's so much out there. I am getting back to, I just aired this week 5 new real breakup stories. And I want to talk about that from, we've got 11 on deck. Like I said, if you have any comments or questions at this point in the live stream, I'll get to them. But going back to, I've been reassessing my channel and where things are at. And so in doing these reaction videos, I'm going back and watching other people's videos, right, a little bit more thoroughly and stuff. And it's just so interesting how many people say the same thing in a different way. Okay, like the ability for someone to say find your mission, the ability for someone to say exercise more, find your purpose, work on yourself. You hear this so many fucking times. Sorry, it's just like, right? It's like, are you doing it? It's like reading a self-improvement book but not doing anything. Or even worse, someone goes, read this book. How many people actually like the person you're watching on YouTube? This is just a curiosity thing. We got 10 on deck. Please let me know. They say, and I've done this before, this is a great book, check it out. They go, well, you got to read these 2 books and you got to take notes on them. I'm just curious, how many times do you actually buy the book? Or is that only when the person that says it is someone like of elevated level to you? I'm just curious because it's so often, like read this book, and I have book notes on my website, and I'm a proponent of good books. Like the last year I've taken a break because I listened to so many books on Audible, and now they're starting to overlap, especially in relationship stuff and self-improvement. There's only so much you can learn. But watching other videos to react to, especially in this space of breakups and relationships, everyone, no contact, these kinds of things are being reiterated. And I've come to the conclusion that information's good, and I'm going to continue to talk about it because it's what people come to the channel for freshly. I've had a client say, I've been watching no contact videos for 2 months because it just supports me in staying in no contact. Okay, that's useful then. And, hearing different perspectives over and over again with the same message, it works for him. So I get that. But my point is, I'm going to double down on the real breakup stories. I've repackaged them a little bit on the thumbnail. Because to me, if you're in a breakup or in a relationship, there's only so many fucking times you can hear general advice. Okay? Like that, work on yourself, find your mission, read this book. Is it tailored to you, right? Now, on the flip side of that, hearing me give advice on a breakup story that has nuance, that has specific details, to me, is different. You can say, oh, this situation's similar to mine, actually. Because what happens is so many times the information in a lot of these videos, it's good. It's kind of like me saying, exercise, it's good for you, or eat more vegetables. And you're like, yeah, I've heard that 1,000 times. And I could frame that in a way that's, really romantic and cool and do different things and tell you to eat broccoli and cauliflower and then tell you all the additives. Are you going to do it? Right? I find that people resonate with real stories the most. I've found this being a professor for years, teaching public speaking. And that's what draws human beings is stories. Your stories, my stories, real stories. And so getting back to getting these breakup stories back out there. And if you have a breakup story you want to share, please send it in to writemac.com. And I'm going to start posting these with my take more and more because to me, it's a part of the space that's not really there. Real breakup stories. And so that's what I'm going to be doing more of. Let me know your take on that. And I did them on my live streams a lot. And these are people that send in their stories. And I say to them, is it all right if I make a public video on this? Yeah, no problem. Just don't put my name in, right? Because it helps other people. Now I'm going to do it in a way that is outside the live stream because people don't click on the live stream because they want to sit for an hour and a half and get into it. But really, I don't know many other people that are doing it. Corey Wayne does it in a certain way. Like he breaks down an email of someone, going into their story. But it's a significantly different thing to do. Right, than just tell you to do no to contact 8,000 times. Hold on a sec. All right, let me just check this question real quick. Mac, I'd be interested in hearing your take on what effects different social media platforms may have on individuals' ability to be in a healthy relationship. Okay, maybe I'll do that down the road. Thanks, Al. What's up, Petty Betty? How you doing? Or maybe what are possible ways to use different social media platforms that don't have determined effects on an individual's psyche? Wow, that's deep, Al. What? Let's just post that. Maybe what are possible ways to use different social media platforms that don't have detrimental effects on an individual's psyche? I mean, what do you mean by that would be my question. Use different social media platforms that don't have detrimental. I'm not sure what, people say that, YouTube's a social media platform because of the comments and whatnot. So I would say that, what's happening with Instagram and those things is they're implementing the ads. You're scrolling through so many things that how can you focus on one thing? You're losing the ability to focus is the biggest thing. And how does that transpire? Your attention span's lower, your listening's less, your interest in you lack the ability to have a monotonous moment because you'll just pull out your phone for a quick blast, right? All right, folks, I'm at almost 2 hours. This has been good. It's been grand. Thanks for your take, Elle. I appreciate you. There's a saying that you fall in love 3 times in a lifetime. I've never heard that. And it's kind of interesting. Being a guy, I never am like, oh, I fell in love. I've never identified that in a statement. I've been in love, but I've never been like, oh, I fell in love with you. I wouldn't limit it to 3 times. It's really interesting when you read something like this or you read a story, and like I said, now with YouTube, someone's got 1 million subscribers and you're like, oh, this is the aficionado of such and such. A lot of it's opinion based. And think about that for a minute. A lot of it's opinion based. Even research and studies are lacking factual evidence. There's still an opinion backed by some sort of evidence, but they're not factual. 2 + 2 is 4. The world agrees on that, right? How if you get a study or one of these things, how it's determined as fact or truth is more or less a theory. So even when you get studies or research, they still have to interpret the answers. You know what I'm saying? So 3 times in life. Well, how many times have you fell in love, Petty Betty? For example, posting IG stories but not being so worried how many people or which people view it. Well, that's funny because I have an IG account and I definitely don't worry that much about how many people view it or which people view it. It's interesting. I'll look into that. I'll talk about it another time. Something about social media. Maybe we'll do some reactions to that. All right, folks, it's been good. Got to get some lunch. Roller Girl, good to see you. L, Petty Betty, Rob IS was late to the game, but you're always on time. Rick C, good to hear from you, buddy. It's curtains.